Excellent. Well, I'm glad and I'm privileged to announce this webinar. Everybody who is in attendance is really in for a treat. My name is Earl Airy. I am one of the co-CEOs of the MPOD Mod Alumni Association. It is a privilege for me to introduce two excellent people who have contributed to the field of organizational development and have definitely been a feather in our cap. And this program, which definitely is changing the lives of people, not only locally, but around the globe. Introducing is Bonnie Richley and Tony Lingham, which have had over a dozen years of validated methods and high impact engagement in the workplace. They have definitely contributed to helping individuals and teams really find that spark that can start the fire and really promote positive impact in individuals' lives, in the workplace, and in the community. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Bonnie and Tony so that they can give us the treat they have in store tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Earl. I really appreciate the very kind words. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be connected with all of you, and we're looking forward to presenting our work to you, and we have plenty of times for questions as well. We hope to make this somewhat of a conversation. And I'd also like to say that don't worry about grasping everything, that we're going to make sure that you get our PowerPoint sent to you once the program is over. So again, welcome from Weatherhead School of Management in the ever beautiful Cleveland. Most of you know me. I have my MSODA, which is the MOD program, and that I have my PhD in organizational behavior from Case Western Reserve. I teach in the MPOD program, and I've been working with Tony in our company, Interactive Science, and we're helping organizations, as Earl mentioned, around the globe at the individual and team levels figure out how to have high impact engagement. Tony?
Thanks, Marie, and thanks, Earl, for that wonderful introduction. So real quick, I was a full professor of organizational behavior in this department, teaching mostly in the DM, MBAs, and MSOR programs. And in 2015, I left to join Antioch University's PhD in Leadership and Change program, and I'm there as the full professor of organizational behavior and leadership. While that was going on, we started a company that Bonnie mentioned, Interaction Science, and we are very excited to tell you what has happened and our approach today in terms of achieving high impact engagement at melding both the individual and team levels.
So our agenda for this evening's webcast, it seems it's very full, but we're going to try to give you an overview, or at least enough to give you a sense of what we're doing. And afterwards, again, we have time for questions, and you can always reach out to us for more information. So we're going to go over a little bit about our current work environment and ask you to think about that. We're going to talk about what is high impact engagement and our approach, phase 1 at the individual level, phase 2 at the team level. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to be certified as an individual and team coach using these 2 phases. And we will also want you to know that our hearts are very much linked to the work that you're all doing as agents of change, positive change, and to let you know that every time we run a workshop for certification, that a portion of the proceeds will go to a scholarship in the MPOD program. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So I'd like to set the stage a little bit, and not so much in a generic way. I'd like you to think about the different contexts in which you are all working in, whether you're a consultant, whether you're working inside an organization, and also if you're volunteering inside an organization. So really take a minute to think about what are the challenges that you're facing, especially when you're trying to create positive organizational change that sticks, that's sustainable. And also, what are you doing that makes it work? So we know that the world of work is constantly evolving. Change is a constant, right? Which is one of the challenges. Diversity is taking multiple forms. For those of you that have had experiential learning, you can think about different learning styles and the challenges that that presents. Different challenges in how we interact with one another. Interactions are expanding to include real and virtual worlds. We work with a lot of teams that have never even met face-to-face. And what are the challenges that occurs through that? Sensitivity to work with members from diverse nationalities and cultures. And organizations are pushing constantly for individuals and teams to have skills in innovation and execution. Now, we throw around the words like team, but what does that really mean? We face a lot of individuals who'll say, well, we're a team, but how do we become a real team, a functional team? Is it just a group of people working together? No, it's a lot more than that. It takes a lot of skill and development, but no one knows how to help a team become a team. The same thing is for innovation, and not just innovation, but execution. What does innovation mean, and how do we learn how to innovate, let alone the execution part? How do we get from innovating to executing? And that's where we find that organizations need a lot of help. Organizations are designed to use a team approach. Going back to what I just said, but how do we become a team? And what happens when we're a team in crisis? There are ways to help a team go from being merely just a functional team to high performance, to a high performing team. We all have leadership and membership in multiple teams, right? If you think about the work that you're doing, maybe in one team you're a leader and in another team you're a member. It takes on a very different skill set. People simply do not work alone. I encounter many people who wish they worked alone, but that's not going to happen, right? 80% of work done is done in teams. In a Gallup study of 10,680 teams globally, only about 2% of teams fulfill 100% of their tasks. That's a pretty revealing set of information and numbers, right? Organizations are aware that a strong, engaged workforce is critical for their success, but how does that happen? You hear the word engagement, right? We need to have a highly engaged workforce, but what does that look like? And how do leaders help their teams, their members become engaged? We hear leaders struggle with that all the time. How can I create an engaged workforce? So there's a unique design embedded in teams. A team leader is simultaneously a team member at a higher level, or a team member could be a team leader at a lower level. Individuals are working with others always in some shape or form. Being able to develop self-awareness and other awareness is a critical first step in developing higher levels of engagement when working with others. So what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? Am I aware of those weaknesses? And how do I help those weaknesses go away? And am I aware of the people that I'm working with? Am I aware of their strengths? Am I aware of their weaknesses? How do we work to develop together as a team? And how do I work to develop as an individual? So what teams have evolved to be really, teams are the engines that drive businesses, they're the force bringing innovations to life, and they are the central organizing form for all work relationships. So teams are everywhere, and we're not going to escape them. Work involves working with others and working in teams. Most training, if you think about it, most training efforts are focused on the individual and not enough at the team level. As we mentioned, 85% of work is done in teams. We're all engaged in multiple teams, and high engagement includes innovation and execution, which is critical to organizational success. Now, what is high impact engagement? Achieving high impact engagement is a melding of both individual and team levels. In our work, we focus on two phases. One, understanding individual motivation and tendencies when working with others. And 2, capturing teams' engagement profiles and their capacities to innovate and execute. So we do that by 1, individual level, using the Learning Needs Inventory, the ALUMNI, Phase 1, which focuses on motivation and tendencies. And you're going to hear more about that in detail shortly. And the team level, using the Team Learning Inventory, the TLI, which is Phase 2, which focuses on the quality of engagement and capacities. Together, this equals high impact engagement. Now, for some of you who've had my class, in the MPOD program, you've had the experience of using the LNI and the TLI. For those of you that haven't, we're going to give you a look at what that looks like and an example of each. So Phase 1, we're going to talk about individual learning and development. Individual level, using the Learning Needs Inventory, which is the ALUMNI Phase 1, again, focuses on motivation and tendencies.
Okay, so we're going to move into individual motivation at work. Our work is primarily focused in the environment where people work in, and it's not where we take folks out into the jungle and do things. We think that when we intervene in the work context, it makes a huge difference because it becomes really meaningful to them, and they can develop based on those behaviors. So based on our own work experience or consulting experience, I'd like to just have some time for you all to think about what motivates individuals when working with others at work. It doesn't really have to be with a team, but it could be. But as long as you're working with others, what do you think motivates individuals? What I'd like to do is to give this time to yourselves. If you can type your responses using the chat feature in Zoom, and let's spend about 1 minute doing that. And as soon as your responses come in, I'm just going to take note of that and see what we come up with. I'm taking notes as you're giving me responses. So I'm looking at a different screen. Okay, I think there is sort of a pause. So this is great because you're capturing things from having meaningful purposes, having positive vibes, being in together, completing the work, important relationships being significant as well. Wanting to make a difference, needed, to make contributions or influence, being happy, being secure, caring about one another, having affiliations, feeling valued, and all these points you've made are very significant. But let's think a bit deeper in that, and I'll go on to the next slide. When you think about what else might be here when working with others, so when people frame questions or statements, are they really highlighting something that motivates them? So for example, can we just move on? These discussions are not useful. I'm sure you've heard something like that. Or we are just digressing, right? Or we could say, could we revisit our objectives for this task? I want to make sure we're on the right track. And some of you said that also have to be aligned with the mission. Could we see what is available online so we are aware of what is out there, seeking out what options we have, and we've heard of that. Or I'm not sure I totally understand why we're doing this project or task. What is our purpose? So when you look at the way people frame things, they do give you an indication in terms of what's important to them or what motivates them or what doesn't. So based on all this, we really looked at what does this show? And what we encountered was that from the previous statements and from those points you've indicated on the chat room or in the chat room, they have underlying needs associated with how they are framed. So we listen to how people frame things. We get to understand underlying needs that they have. And in our work, we uncovered 4 fundamental underlying patterns that are directly related to our own motivational needs at work. So it's nothing to do with going grocery shopping. However, understanding and meeting an individual's needs would certainly enhance engagement. Why would I say that? Because when people are framing questions and you address them, what they would feel is they would feel appreciated, they would feel heard, and they would feel valued. And with this kind of positive vibes, like you've indicated, it will certainly enhance engagement. So that's what we also believe in. And in our study and research, we found that there are 4 underlying learning needs. One is the need for information. One is the need for clarity. One is the need for parameters. And one is the need for action. So just give you an idea, the need for information would be, have you thought of this? What about that? And people throwing ideas on the table just to make sure they are considered. So we are not, prematurely conforming and constraining our opportunities to explore further ideas. Need for clarity can be very useful because sometimes we get to do things without really thinking why we're doing that. Or to make sure that if everybody is on the same page and there's no confusion. And finally, a need for parameters, second to last, the need for parameters, we are looking at folks who say, what is our goal? What's our objectives? What are we, what do you want us to achieve? And these are people who are looking for guidelines and goals and objectives. And they would say it in the way they frame it. And finally, the need for action, pretty clearly. People say things like, can we move ahead? This is, our discussions are going nowhere. Or can we just start coming up with a plan so we can show what we can do? Things like that are framing that indicates a person's need for action. So what we did was we then translated this into a scale and tested it over years. And we came up with the learning needs inventory, which is designed to help individuals engage with others effectively. Now, what it does, it provides a person with their adaptability profile. So when you look at the different needs that's occurring, how well do we adapt to those shifting needs or or we just tend to focus on one particular need that we might have. And this is not talking about a style, but rather how adaptive you are when you're working with others. It also captures a person's innovation and execution tendencies. Like we said earlier on, one of the organizational goals, I think it's very critical now, we've seen it in terms of design, creativity, innovation, design thinking, is all really focusing on innovative and execution, or innovation and execution tendencies or skills. At the individual level, we look at tendencies. And the L&I is based on grounded behaviors in the work environment. We deliberately do that because we want to facilitate effective coaching at an individual level. And all of you as consultants, in your consulting experiences and coaching others, when you can show them specific behaviors they can use, that's when development really happens. And so that's why we crafted it and designed it that way. So when you actually do the L&I and what you receive when you take the L&I is the follows. It would showcase the definitions of the underlying learning needs that we talk about, need for information, clarity, parameters, and action, but the definitions of each of them, and your scores for each of these underlying needs. The higher the score, it really means that you have a stronger need for that particular aspect in the work environment. And then we show your overall adaptability profile. We'll show you an example later on. And then we also show details of innovation and execution tendencies that's unique to each individual. And there are 8 tendencies, and we'll show where you tend to look at in each one of them. And your overall innovation execution tendencies profile. We will also show you that in these PowerPoint slides as we move along. And then we also create a workbook for individuals to use and to create and craft a learning and development plan. And most importantly, we have a really in-depth, clear facilitator guidebook for coaches who are using the L&I. So here are some examples, 2 examples of profiles of adaptability. The one on the left, if you look at it, the higher the score, the higher your need, and that's probably what you would push for even more when you're in the work environment. And if you look at the green quadrant on the left-hand side, all the scores on the green quadrant, which is information 1, 2, 3, and 4, are all at a maximum of 5, whereas the other underlying needs are not as strong. So this person would certainly push for information when working with others and primarily push on that, and to a very strong extent. So this person would say things like, what about this? How do we thought of that? Could we look on the internet? Should we go to the library and look stuff up? Can we benchmark with other folks? These are all gathering information. That's what they tend to do. The profile on the right is a bit more complex because you see some high needs for information. You don't really see a lot of high needs for clarity, but you do see some high needs in parameters and not really for action. So when you look at this, the underlying needs for this particular individual is really 2 fundamental needs that it's important to them. One is gathering information, and the other one is making sure that we are adhering to parameters, goals, objectives. So this person would not only just say, can we look at this, have we thought of this, but do you think this idea is really associated with what we're supposed to do? And so when you see something like that, what it showcases is a flexibility or adaptability on 2 of the 4 underlying needs. And of course, there are people with adaptability on all 4, which also is a much better person and easier to work with because they can meet individual needs. Based on our studies, we have identified 15 different profiles of adaptability. And all that would showcase certain kinds of behaviors when working with others. This is an example of the individual's innovation and execution tendencies. So if you look, I apologize that it's a little blurry, but in terms of innovation capacity, there are 2 aspects to it, and that's the pink axis or arrows. One is ideation, and the other one is a synthesis and development and design. When we are looking at ideation, ideation is not necessarily innovation in and of itself. It's just one of the start points. And there are people who would like to look and generate quantity of ideas. And these are people who would gather as many ideas as they can on the table. Whereas there are others who would say, I don't think that idea is good. I don't think it's relevant. So they are judging the quality of the ideas. A person with a good sense of ideation is balanced on both quantity and quality of ideas. And in this case, you would find that the dotted line from the kite does show that that end result is on the pink line. So that person is balanced in both quality and quantity of ideas. If you flip to the other side of the innovation axis, what we have is what choices people make in terms of having all these ideas up front. What did they choose to work on? And folks who are on the bottom right-hand corner of that axis are people who would tend to select and choose ideas that align with expectations given to them. On the left-hand side of the axis are folks who would choose ideas and suggestions or even possibilities that are more in relation to how easy it's going to be done and how feasible, so as to get as many things as possible to get done. In this case, in this profile, the person is really more of a tendency to ensure that the choices they make align with the expectations given to them. We now move over to the green axis, and the green axis is the execution axis. And we know that a lot of times when you're not very clear in what you do, you tend to always have to revisit and rework and adjust and adjust. But if you really know what you're doing, there's going to be less adjustments, except from feedback from others who are actually affected by the project you're doing. Now, in terms of understanding and clarity and precision, there are two tendencies. One is to the right of the axis, which is clarifying any emergent questions, issues, or thoughts that individuals might have that may not even be related to the task. Such as, I don't know why I'm on this team, like that. Things that may not be relevant to the task. On the other side, on the left-hand side of the arrow, are people who would be very concerned about making sure everybody knows what is to be done, which is clarifying expectations and goals. In this person's profile, the tendency is to clarify expectations and goals in working in the team. And then finally, on the delivery and execution part of actualization, the two sides of that green arrow, on the right side is that you tend to always get feedback when you're working or when actions are being done, so you can always adjust accordingly. Or the other one is on the left-hand side is to really check off as many things you can get done so as to feel effective. That's probably more efficient than it is effective. But the combination of both is when you're looking at effectiveness. In this particular profile, the person tends to look at checking off as many tasks as possible. So this is an example of how to showcase an individual's tendencies when you're looking at innovation and execution. So what does the LNI help in achieving full engagement? The LNI helps individuals realize a few things. One is how and why they frame statements the way they do. And underlying their framing is an underlying need that they may not realize. So this helps them understand why and how. It also shows how adaptable they are at work based on a profile, and then their innovation tendencies and execution tendencies. Since the LNI is behavior-based, specifically designed for coaching and development, focus on adaptability and innovation execution, it makes it very easy to work with individuals to craft a development plan in a way that showcases what behaviors can be done to improve or develop themselves. And as the LNI is based on behavioral tendencies, it would raise their level of awareness. It would raise the level of others and what they might be needing or motivations. It will also raise others' feeling being heard and appreciated, which is pretty significant in today's world. And it will also increase, hence, levels of engagement. This is especially useful when you're looking at team leadership coaching, not just leadership coaching and development.
Okay, phase 2, we're going to move to the team learning and development. So team level using the team learning inventory, the TLI, and it focuses on the quality of engagement and capacities at the team level. So as we said before, the centrality of teams, just a reminder, we believe that teams are the engines that drive businesses. They are the force bringing innovations to life, and they are the central organizing form for all work relationships. Yet what we find is that little training development is focused on the team level. So good and not so good experiences in teams, some responses from team leaders and members that we've collected over the years. The good is that we believe in one another, the focus is on relationships, that we have a clear objective, we leverage members' strengths, we listen to one another, we have a good project plan, there's trust, we have an ability to contribute. Other things that are not so good is there's micromanagement, there's subgrouping, not a collaborative atmosphere, control, there's no openness to new ideas, there's lack of cooperation, too rigid. So in all of this, how do we put this together to provide a roadmap for development? And
if you can recall, some of the information you captured on in the chat was very similar to what we showed on the previous slide.
There was definitely a focus on cooperation and on building relationships, when most research focuses on how do we get the work done? How do we complete the task, with an absence or a total neglect of how do you build the relationships? So based on our research over the past 15 years, we found that there are 4 major dimensions to the experience of team interaction, or as we like to call it, team engagement. There's the diverging dimension, non-task related, and that means that's a focus on building the relationships. There are 5 different aspects. There's the converging dimension, that's task related. There are 3 aspects. And then there's the power and influence. And finally, the openness dimension. An important point to note, every team is unique in their experience of team interaction. So there's not a cookie cutter model, and there's not one way to fix it all. So the team learning inventory, the TLI profiles the team's current and desired state of engagement within their work environment. So context is critical, and that context can change continuously. So a team member may leave, a new team member may enter the profile, and the leader may change, right? So we ask them to answer 2 different sets of questions. One is the real, where are you at now? How do you see your current experience with the team? And then what would you like it to be? What would you imagine the best experience to be? And it also captures the team's current innovation and execution capacities. A team coach is able to help the team achieve its desired state of engagement and its desired state of innovation and execution capacities. And that's done through the report, the TLI. This process helps a team contribute and influence its larger system, resulting in high impact engagement. So the TLI report includes response rates, and it also can include not only the team's self-report, but also it can capture clients' feedback based on how they see the team. It details of each dimension and the team scores, overall mapping of the quality of engagement, variance of team members' ratings, so it shows the aggregate ratings and individual ratings, but they're anonymous. It does not disclose who said what. Assessment of team performance, member satisfaction, and psychological safety. Qualitative comments from team members, which are also anonymous. Evaluation of the team from bosses and clients that work with the team directly. Details of the team's innovation and execution capacities. An overall profile of the team's innovation and execution capacities. A workbook for the team, and a facilitator guide for coaches. So here's an example of the overall mapping of team interactions. So if we look at the blue line, that is their real current state, how they see themselves interacting as a team. This is aggregate data. So you can see in this teams, if the diverging non-task relational dimensions, they're scoring very low, except for individuality, that's a bit higher. And we can also see on openness, it's a bit higher. On the converging, the task functions, they're a bit higher, but they're pretty low in relationality. Now, if you think back to what Tony and I said, that you, when asked the question, many of you said had a strong focus on relationships and how important that was to engagement. And here in this team, there's a good amount of work that needs to be done. But the good news is, the very positive news is that when you look at the red line, they're asking for more of that. They're asking for higher levels of engagement, more active listening. They're asking for more relationality and solidarity. Solidarity means that I want to feel like I belong to part of something bigger. I want to feel that there's more meaning to this than just me. And they're even asking for more understanding in the task, which is they want more clarity, they want more action, and they want more planning. All of this is good news. Now, if we look at openness, it's interesting to note that in the ideal, they're asking for a little bit less openness. They feel that great freedom already in listening to one another and being who they are. Power and influence, they're saying that they're good where they're at, that they feel that they have enough of that for now, that they want the reliance, comfort to rely on a single leader, but that may change if they're more comfortable with having a stronger relationship with one another.
So going back to the previous slide, you would notice that the profile helps us understand where are the major gaps that a team coach could help the team develop towards their desired state. But when we look at the innovation and execution capacities.
So this is a question on the chat that you might want to quickly touch on before you move on.
Okay, I have a question. Individual learning is different from emotional needs like a need for connection, feeling, shared purpose. So the question we have is, are individual learning needs different from emotional needs like the need for connection and feeling, a sense of community, and or a need for shared purpose? Or do you see these needs operating at a team level? I'm glad you're saying that. Those are actually needs at the team level. And in terms of the learning needs you're talking about, they are at the individual level motivation, which is what people would tend to push for, and not trying to create an environment. So yes, you're right. It is something that's more at the team level. I hope we have that. Let us know if we answered that question. And so we'll move on while we're seeing if the question is answered. But over here now you see is the innovation and execution. Wonderful. The innovation and execution, they are not tendencies, but they are capacities at the team level. So very similar, you have the innovation axis and the execution axis. But what we have here are two kites. The blue kite is the actual capacity, state of capacity right now, both in terms of innovation and execution. And the red line is the state that they have right now that they would like to have, the capacities they would like to have. So you can see in the ideation piece, for some reason, the lines are not corresponding to the kites. Not sure why that happened. But if you draw a line to enclose the kite, the blue kite, and you draw a box to enclose the red kite, you would see where they are in terms of ideation and where they want to be in terms of ideation. In this case, actually, it's quite similar, that they want to move in the same direction, but increase capacity. That's the green arrow, the tiny little green arrow that's on ideation. On the other hand, if you look at actualization, for some reason, the boxes are not corresponding well, but it really shows that from being able to select ideas that are feasible. They like to select ideas that are more related to alignment. So that's the capacity they want to evolve to. In terms of execution, in terms of clarity, they are looking at the tendency right now, or the capacity right now, is to be able to clarify expectations and make sure everybody's on board in terms of the task. And they'd like to include more emergent confusion or anything that others might be concerned about that are not related to the task. So that's a little crossing the nexus. And then finally, in doing, what this profile is showing really is that they are right now currently at checking off things to get done, which is on the left side of the arrow actually. And where they want to be is making sure they can get feedback so their work is more effective. So that is where you can see the capacities changing or evolving. And because it's all based on behaviors, you can help the team craft specific behavioral behaviors for the team to work on so that they'll move toward where they want to be in terms of innovation and execution capacities.
Tony, may I make, excuse me, may I make a point here? Excuse me, everyone. Imagine looking at this and thinking, you know, I'm the only one around here that wants to create higher engagement or that wants to get better at innovation. And imagining you have this story going on in your head, right? Nobody else wants that. We never talk about that. But then you get this profile back and you realize that this is the aggregate data. And all of a sudden you realize, no, I'm not the only one. This is data from my team. We all want more of this. We all want to be more engaged. We all want to listen to one another more, right? We all want better understanding. We all want to take more action. What does that do for motivation? I'm not alone in this. We've just not had a template or a pathway for how to get there. And you have a coach that's going to have you get, you know, create that pathway. All of a sudden, that builds solidarity, it builds teamwork, there's motivation, and you can start moving toward that relationship because I'm not alone in this. This builds a team. I just wanted to add that.
And also, what's really powerful is that you start opening up real meaningful dialogue that's based on data. It's not just what they think. And it is what the team is really telling themselves. So our encounters with teams using the TLI is that the dialogue that ensues based on the coaching is very specific. They all can see it for themselves and they start seeing the need to improve at the team level. So it really detracts, it takes away trying to point fingers at individuals, but rather looking at the team as a persona. So a summary of what you will receive from the LNI and the TLI is, if you remember, some of the things we've identified is that you get a definition of the underlying learning needs from the LNI and your scores for each of them. Your overall adaptability profile, details of innovation execution tendencies, your overall innovation execution tendencies profile that we talked about, and a workbook for creating learning development plan and a facilitator guidebook for coaches. The TLI reports, just to summarize, you have the response rate. So you know if more than 50%, research shows that it's quite accurate for the team. If it's less than 50%, it's not very accurate. Details of dimensions and the team scores, their overall mapping and quality of engagement. We also talk a bit about the variance of team members' ratings. The variance is an important piece that actually showcases to what extent members are experiencing the quality of engagement in the same way, and in what way are they experiencing totally different. Call that consistencies, inconsistencies of engagement quality. And then we have the details of team innovation execution capacities and their overall profiles, workbook for the team, and the facilitator guidebook. Not to forget, actually, the TLI is very much a 360 assessment on the team, because we also look at bosses and clients or customers that work with the team and see how they are experiencing that team. And also we have qualitative and quantitative comments, qualitative comments from both team members and external evaluators. So you get a very good sense of a 360 of the team that would move the team very much forward effectively. So high impact engagement is combining the use of both the LNI and the TLI, so you can have individuals and teams developing awareness and skills to achieve high impact engagement. Individuals will understand how to identify and attend to theirs and others' underlying learning needs when working on tasks or projects, or hearing how they frame things when they are asking questions. Individuals will also be able to contribute effectively to the team level capacities because they can see their own tendencies and they can see where the team's capacities are and they can contribute accordingly or evolve. And then finally, the teams will be able to actively contribute and influence higher systems. One of you mentioned that in the chat, and this is a pretty significant piece because a team is always embedded in a larger system. It could be a department, a division, an organization, depending on the levels you have. But teams who are able to actively contribute and influence the higher system in which they're embedded will ultimately result in really affecting the organization itself very positively.
So in summary, our approach to achieving high impact engagement is based at the individual level with the learning needs inventory that focuses on motivation and tendencies, and the team level using the team learning inventory, which focuses on the quality of engagement and capacities. So we're really happy to launch our first team coaching certification program, and we're certifying individuals using this two-phase approach, the LNI and TLI, to achieve high impact engagement. And anyone interested in attending our 3 or 4 day program, which is the 3-day is the LNI and TLI, and the 4th day includes Train the Trainer. You can email Tony at tony.lingham@gmail.com. And there's also a hot link to our website and the brochure. And again, we'll send out these PowerPoints to everybody that's enrolled. And now we'd like to just leave it open for questions.
Right now I'm seeing a chat that's asking me can the TLI be used independently with other individual assessment and or personality profiles other than the LNI? Absolutely. But the link between the LNI and the TLI is a very significant piece in terms of achieving high impact engagement. Let's say if you're using the MBTI, it might show some personality profiles and how that might affect the team. But how do you translate personality into behavioral norms or behavioral aspects for people to evolve? If that can be done, it certainly would be feasible. I hope that answers your question. The other question that we have is, have you seen this work in organizations that are focusing on agile practices? Not yet, because we have been working as our duo team, and we've been working with currently bigger organizations such as Bank of America and an artist organization in New York, etc. But once we actually leverage this and have more folks on our team, this certainly would also help with folks who are intending to move in the agile method. It certainly would help.
I think we have a comment and a question.
Yes, so we have a comment that says, I love this inventory. I currently work in a very distracted environment and know that many organizations are going to micro-learning. How are you addressing dosing information for those who are using this tool? Would love to know what you mean by dosing. Are you talking about overdose, or are you talking about how much are being given to an individual or team at a certain point? The interesting thing about our tools is that the LNI only has 16 items, and it takes about 2 minutes to finish and complete. And so it's designed to be very simple and easily accessible. So I don't think there will be overdosing of information. In terms of the team, what happens is when the team assessment is 30 items in terms of the actual and the desired. But when they're actually looking at the profiles, the images are so meaningful that they don't tend to have an situation where they feel they're overdosed. I've not experienced that before.
The next question is a good one about time 1 and time 2 longitudinal data.
Is there a way to track Romeo changes in scores over time to see improvement trends? Is there a database reporting functionality? That is one of the beauties of the instrument that we have at the team level. What we do in our consulting practice is that we come in, we have the individuals do the L&I, so they get to see how members are working with each other and what motivates them. That's one level. At a team level, what we do is a time 1 at the team level. We look at their profiles, we engage with the team coaching, which is usually about at least 2 hours minimum. And then we talk about some behavioral learning plans for the team at the team level. And we let about any time from 2 to 6 months to go by. And then we'll do a time 2. And we have done this in a 4-year study, looking at 52 teams, and every one of the teams actually improved. And that's really cool because it really supports this notion of evidence-based coaching. And we already know that in terms of individual coaching, there are not many coaching practices that can showcase evidence-based coaching in time 1, time 2. But we have this to even show it at the team level, time 1 and time 2. So we are very proud of that. And I think that's significant for organizations. Giving the right amount at the right time, oh, got it. So in terms of dosing, giving the right amount at the right time, so far we have not encountered any problems with that. It's simple enough that they get to understand their behaviors. They tend to look at their behaviors instead of typologies and trying to understand what they mean. So it really is, we don't encounter any excessive dosing.
Could I just want to add something else. Prior to going in and doing the inventory at the team level, we work, and in using the L&I, we work closely with the team leader, supervisor. We have a meeting with them up front to understand the layout of the team, if there have been any changes, what are some of the stressors involved, and we ensure that the team leader is part of the meetings with regard to the team coaching, etc. And then we do a follow-up with them afterwards to give them tips and pointers on how to ensure that the team stays focused on the action steps that they've created. And, we're open to follow-up and questions with them. So they're not just, handed a report and kind of, good luck with all of that. That's built into the plan.
Yeah, and it's very effective in terms of developing team leadership skills, because it really helps a team leader move ahead of the team. So like, if any of you are musicians, if you're playing the piano, your eyes and your hands can never be at the same time. Eyes will surely break down. But if your eyes are ahead of your fingers, you would tend to do very well. That's what team leaders should be. They should be ahead of the team's engagement.
And I'd just like to add that this comes from hearing from team leaders themselves who have said, I've been given this team, but I've not been given any training on how to lead a team, or I have a problem in this team and I've not been given anywhere to go to understand, how to develop the team or how to develop my skills as a team leader. So we found that helping them before, during, and after has really made a big impact on their ability to lead.
The other question is, in our research, did we see variations in how engaging bosses and clients impacted how things played out? Absolutely, because most of the time when you just look at the team itself, they may be aware of where they're at, but they may not know how they're being experienced by the larger system. So every time we work with teams and we have the 360 version where we have the clients and bosses, it does make them really come face to face with where their team is at within the system. And it does shift the team to focus on being more effective in terms of contribution and influence to the larger system and not just within the team. So that's one of the things that we are very, it's very significant in the work we do. The other question in terms of global leadership, how may a global leader use these tools to engage people in a multicultural environment, to build a high-performing team with various cultural characteristics, different time orientations, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, etc.? Beautiful question. One of the things that we've done is we've translated the TLI and the LNI into the 3 major languages across the globe. That is English, Mandarin, and Spanish. But we've also tested the TLI and the LNI in different parts of the globe, in almost all different aspects, different areas, such as the Americas, Europe, Africa, China, Southeast Asia. And we have those translations. So what is really cool with this is that not only can you give the English version to those in the US, you can also give the Chinese versions to those in China, and the Spanish versions to those in Spanish, in Spain or any Latin American countries. And they'll be still on the same page because the data is the same. So what would be interesting is I'm in fact working on a major research project with a multicultural team that's working in the Arctic Circle, that has a team with members from multiple countries and nations. And this works very well. And we've just put out the research project for that. But in any case, it is true that virtual teams and multicultural teams, multinational teams are becoming more and more prevalent. And the beauty of this is that it is online. So members can take this depending on what their time is. It's only a matter of having a coaching session with the team at a certain time frame where everybody can attend. And we've not had much problems with that.
Okay, I think we're right on time.
Yeah. So just an indication of what publications we've done, some of it, not all of them, and also conferences in the next slide. And finally, some working papers that we've done in the last slide.
Well, we certainly want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been a joy to connect with you. We'll send these PowerPoints out. Feel free to follow up with any questions you may have. And I cannot sign off without saying I apologize for my coughing this evening. I did not want to miss being with all of you. And I have to attribute it to my Cleveland asthma. So I really feel very badly that you had to tolerate me this evening. But I hope this also provoked a lot of questions for you. And we look forward to connecting with you further. And we hope that this was enticing. And I wish I could have seen all your faces tonight because it was really wonderful to be with you. So thank you very much.
And if any one of you are interested in being certified, just email me and we can set it up. There is a link to our site that shows you the actual certification dates and venue. You click on that, you'll get more details. And if you're interested at all, just email me and let me know. But we look forward to expanding our cadre of coaches in this regard.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye, thanks. Okay, so we should stop recording. Are we done? Where is the recording function? I want to stop the recording. There we go.